All right, so let's get started. Again, my name is John Phipps. I'm the senior channel manager over here at Jet Global. I work closely with the team at Optimus, and so part of that partnership means that we're constantly doing trainings. One of the trainings that we decided to put together is what you'll be seeing today: building complex operational reports with a BI tool. And again, I can't speak highly enough of Optimus as a partner. We've had a partnership for over a couple years now. Very close partnership. I've had the chance to come down to Puerto Rico and Jamaica earlier this year, and hoping to do it again. And really, in terms of a partner, I always look for Microsoft and ERP partners that are really going to be focused on providing the best possible options for their clients. And Optimus absolutely does it. They're always a great advocate for their clients. So again, everybody on the call is fortunate to be working with them. So kind of clicking through that, we'll do a little bit of background on Jet, and then we're going to run through a number of examples about how complex reports can be built out with BI tools. I also today will kind of start out with using a real-time tool to build out some reports, and then you'll see how much easier it is when you use a business intelligence tool like Jet Analytics. And then we'll show a little bit of dashboarding functionality with tools like Microsoft Power BI. So to get started here, a little bit of background on Jet Global Data Technologies. We've been in the space, the Microsoft Dynamics space, for over 17 years. We were founded in 2002. Our founder originally started our company because the CFO came to him, and the CFO of one of the CFO who came to him wanted to have his information from Dynamics Nav inside of Excel. And our former founder, who was running a Microsoft practice at the time, so a Microsoft partner or a Microsoft reseller, went through and developed what ultimately became Jet. And what that did is that allowed that CFO to have all of his reporting and information inside of Excel. And really that large customer base that we've got here, we've got over 14,000 plus customers. I think at this point, I probably need to update this slide. I think it's actually coming up a little closer to 15,000 plus customers. And really that is predominantly via word of mouth. What do we do? Well, again, we still do the same thing we did when we were founded in 2002. We help users get information out of their Dynamics database into a place that they can actually work with it. For most users, that's going to be Microsoft Excel. But then in the last few years, there have been other options for data visualization. So stuff like Microsoft Power BI is an option. So we'll show you how you can get information again out of your Dynamics database into a place that you as the end user can actually work with it. One other thing to note here, we've got a very close relationship with Microsoft. We've developed tools at their request. So you'll see a lot of functionality is really kind of focused on that close relationship. And really that makes it so that we can provide a lot of out-of-the-box functionality that really no other providers can go in and do this. So that's really why we're the leader in this space. Over the majority of these 14,000 plus companies are using a Microsoft product. And that brings me to my last point here. Some of you are aware we were acquired by a company called Insight Software back in May. And Insight Software's objective really is to try to be the leading provider of reporting for all ERPs, all databases. And they realized, kind of while they were going through the process, that they were really missing a strong presence in the dynamic space. It came up that they were able to acquire Jet, and that's kind of what happened there. And really because of that, that has, really kind of cemented their role now in the dynamic space with the Jet team there to kind of push that along. What that's meant for the Jet team and the Jet clients is just really there's a lot of additional support now behind the tool. You've got a full-size company that is now there to kind of help deliver value. So in regards to those 14,000 customers, one of the things I always start with, because I think this really helps give individuals a context of the flexibility of Jet solutions, is this top 500 customer slide. And you'll see in this is a wide variety of companies in different industries. The reason this is important because this is a testament to the flexibility of the JET solution. If you think about a database that is set up for a manufacturing company as opposed to a database that's set up for a food and beverage company or a retail company, there's going to be lots of customizations. There's going to be lots of third-party add-ons as you change and build up the system to capture and reflect what you need. But with JET, because we're able to read all those customizations, because we're able to read all those third-party add-ons, we're really able to provide all of these organizations, regardless of what industry they're in, meaningful reporting and analytics, because again, JET can pull in any of that information. So that's the first point here. The other point to note here is that a large portion of these companies aren't just reporting off a Dynamics database. Many of them have other ERP, other systems in their technology stack. Some of them have CRM, some of them have other SQL databases that they want to report against. But in the exact same way that JET can read all those customizations, JET typically can read all those other systems and pull them together and provide meaningful reporting and analytics of that data inside of their entire technology stack, regardless if it's a number of systems for manufacturing versus a number of systems for construction. And so kind of walking through our solutions, we'll touch briefly on JET Reports today. JET Reports is a real-time reporting tool. What this means is that when I hit run, I get the latest numbers that have been posted in the system directly out of the box or directly out of the report. So if I post an updated transaction, I'm going to be able to see those details. You'll see with JET Reports, I can set up the structure of my report and hit run and keep it there. So I don't have to worry about having to do a lot of manual manipulation. But probably most of what we'll be talking about is JET Analytics, because there's going to be a lot of benefits, specifically if you're trying to build out complex reports by using a BI tool. But a real-time tool will always have its place. JET Reports is included with all of our licenses for JET Analytics, because there are cases where users do need to run information directly against the database. Typically, reports like financials need to have a specific run date and need to have some connection directly with the ERP. So JET Reports is available. So we'll run through that. Also, we'll probably touch briefly on the JET Hub, which is the central destination for all report distribution. It doesn't matter if you're building out reports with JET Reports or JET Analytics. The JET Hub can be the location that users can go in and consume those reports. There's an element of report management, so there's going to be version control. There's going to be run history. All of that information is going to be available. You can also do stuff like schedule reports to be run and emailed out. So you can set up your reports to automatically run, email out for reports maybe like at the end of the month when you're doing month-end close, and you'll have those instantly available when you need them. So the big difference that we're going to talk about today is the difference between running reports with a real-time solution versus running reports against the data warehouse and cubes. For JET, this is really what makes up a BI solution. From a JET perspective, business intelligence is reporting and dashboards against the data warehouse and cubes. And it's important to make that distinction because I'm sure, as everybody on the call has seen, business intelligence is one of those terms that gets thrown around pretty casually. So you want to be able to have a clear understanding of what that's going to mean. Now, this is really the value behind making it easy to build out not only complex reports, but dashboards. It's the difference between your database and the data warehouse and cubes. This picture does a good job illustrating those differences. If we start over here on the left, and we can think about this, we'll think about it initially as just the full database. This is Dynamics Nav. It's a relational database, so it's made up of tables and fields. Its objective and kind of what it was designed for, and this is really any relational database, is to store all of this data. You've got all your tables, you've got all your fields. Again, the objective with these solutions is to store data. That's kind of really what they're optimized for. The challenge is pulling that information back out. because when I want to build out a complex report, I, as the end user, have to know how everything is set up and structured. And we'll go through an example of this where I'm going to have to build out a sales report, and I'll build it out, and then I'll build out the equivalent in the cubes, and you'll see how much quicker it's going to be. But relational database, again, it's going to be fairly complex. Now, the data warehouse is going to be much more effective because the information's already been organized out. I don't need to connect multiple tables and fields. Those tables have already been connected. So, for example, in our pre-built data warehouse for Dynamics Nav, we have 7 different tables that have already been pre-connected. If I want to see any of the fields in those tables, I can go in and instantly get access to that. And I'm only going to be pulling in what's going to be relevant. So I don't have to look at all the information in my database. I just need to see what's the information I want to report against. You also see that I can pull in information from multiple data sources. In this first example, we say database, but this really could be databases. This could be your entire technology stack. It's the same kind of format and functionality. Everything is set in tables and fields because you're trying to store all this data. But again, the difficult part, specifically if you're trying to connect multiple data sources, is making the connection between all that. Because now not only do you have to know where all the tables and fields sit, you now have to know where the tables and fields sit and connect to each other if the data sources are connected to one another. And so you have to do that connection on a report by report basis. It's going to be very manual, very difficult, potentially very error prone. With the data warehouse, again, you can connect information from multiple databases and connect them in one format. And Jet's very flexible in the sense that we can connect to anything with SQL, OLE, ODBC. We've got an AnySource connector that can connect to just about anything. We partner with a company called CData that's got hundreds of different connections. So Jet has a kind of unparalleled flexibility to connect to any data source. And then you can structure that connection together, put it into the data warehouse, and report against it in one format. Now, this is typically where most BI vendors are going to stop, is at this data warehouse piece. Because Jet specializes in Microsoft, we have the ability to specialize in OLAP cubes, which you'll see in the examples today. That's going to factor in dimensionality. That means if I want to build out a very complex report, if I want to build out sales by item category, broken down by year, broken down by posting date, I can build that instantly, and I can have not only my sales amount, but my cost amount, and then I can have profit and profit percentage. I can do that instantly, and I can do it without knowing my database. So I'll go through and build out those examples, and I only need to know what I want to pull out. When I go through and do the examples that we do today, I really haven't done much preparation or practice on that. And that's because the way that the cubes are set up, I can just open them up and find everything that I need to build out the report. So again, I did a few of the examples that I did yesterday for the first time, just because I went through and I knew I could build those out without knowing the database. And these are very complex reports. These are complex reports that if I had to build them out in Dynamics Nav on my own, I couldn't do it. If we even have trainers here that without the cubes might not be able to build out some of those directly against the data source. You really have to be a Dynamics Nav expert. But with the cubes, you've got dimensionality. You just need to know what you want to pull out. You also see I can have stuff like pre-calculated values. This also helps build out more complex reports because I can set specific calculations on the back end and have everybody reporting against the same number. I mentioned in that sales example, I might have profit or gross profit. Profit and gross profit don't typically sit in Dynamics Nav. Those are specific calculations that users will do inside of the report. But if I'm doing it in a report by report basis, all of a sudden I'm going to end up that maybe I'm looking at one report and another user's looking at a different report, and there's a slightly different calculation for how that's set. And then all of a sudden we walk into a meeting to talk about why gross profit is up or down, and then we realize we have two different numbers. And now we're all of a sudden having to spend most of that meeting trying to figure out which number is correct. This is a kind of universal challenge with anybody that doesn't have one single source of truth. With the Jet Cubes, we resolved this challenge by having pre-calculated values, by having one single calculation that you can set where gross profit is, And then everybody that's going to look at it is going to see the same information. So very clear. The other thing this will do is this will have a much better performance experience for the end user. We don't need to wait for reports to be run here. Reports are already set up and ready to go. We just need to consume what we want to consume. This will make it so that I can build out and toggle between complex reports very easily. It also means that I can have the functionality and the responsiveness that I'm expecting if I want to have dashboards. I can tie that all together, and I can go back and forth and tie slice and dice data to get what I need. Again, all because of the data structure inside of the cubes. The cubes also have much more controls. We talked about the control on the calculation side. We're also going to have control over what users have access to. So we can go through and have that set up and ready to go. So again, the cubes are going to be easier for the end user to use. They're going to be more controlled to deploy out, and they're going to have better performance. So we'll see another example of this and how that is set up in terms of the structure of how these are deployed. Again, you can see we take information from our data source, or data sources. We'll mostly be looking at Dynamics data in the examples that we have, but we can also have some information from some other SQL sources. They're going to go through what's called the JET Data Manager. And what the JET Data Manager is it's an ETL tool, which stands for extract, transform, and load. And you can kind of see where all those steps are taking place here. Extract, transform, and load into the cubes. What an ETL tool is going to do is it's going to automate the connection between the different tables and fields. And specifically, it'll automate it in a point-and-click interface. If the end user typically wants to build out a data warehouse, they're going to have to sit there and manually write out SQL code. But with an ETL tool, they can do that in a point-and-click interface, which means that those changes can be put together very quickly. And they can be modified very quickly, which means that you can deploy a BI tool much quicker than you typically could. Typically, a BI implementation is a 12 to 18 month process. And this is according to Gartner. With JET, it can be deployed in a matter of weeks because of that ETL tool and because of some other functionality that we have. But again, the ETL process, and back to that, extract, pulling it from multiple data sources or a single data source, transforming it, so working it through the staging database, denormalizing that data, deciding what's only going to be relevant, and then pulling that into the data warehouse, and then loading it into, again, the data warehouse and the cubes, and then deploying that out to wherever you want to have that information set up. So you can, again, easily consume that via JET Excel. So the JET Excel ribbon. You can go ahead and consume dashboards in tools like Power BI, or you can even consume it in Excel Online, depending on how you want to do that. So yeah, most of what we'll be talking about today is JET Analytics. This is our flagship product. This is really what the majority of our clients purchase at this point. Again, you'll see the reporting is going to be as easy as possible. Dashboards are very quick and easy. And you'll see throughout this, this solution, there's going to be a few main points. So again, we talked about the ETL tool. That's going to make it very easy to modify the data warehouse and cubes on the fly. So you can build this out to exactly what you need. You can deploy it out to Power BI. Again, you'll have one single source of the truth. So those pre-calculated values will exist there very effectively. And then again, one of the things that I haven't talked about is that JET ships with a data warehouse and 6 pre-built cubes for Dynamics Nav out of the box. So we'll get started with that. For most clients, that's going to meet 80% of their reporting needs. So we take all of our BI experience with Nav clients when we build that data warehouse and those cubes. And we tie all of that information together so that you're getting the widest possible set of information that you'll probably need initially. And then you can use the data warehouse automation to customize exactly what you need, or if you need to build a cube from scratch, that can be done very easily. The pre-built project installs in 2.5 to 3 hours, which means that you can have 80% of your reporting needs out of the box, ready to go. In fact, all the reports that I'll show today are all part of our pre-built project. I'm not using any cubes that have many customizations or third-party add-ons. So because of that, you could, if you got done with this call, if you reached out to the team at Optimus, you got installed and ready to go, and you got everything set up, you could be building out a lot of these reports by the end of the day. Because again, these will install in 2.5 to 3 hours. And again, you'll be able to push this out to a wide range of users with a lot of customization. Again, everything that I'm going through and building out is going to be kind of built out from scratch with actually without a lot of kind of background or planning. I can just open this up and decide what sort of reports I want to build. So that being said, let's run through a couple examples here. We're going to run through a few of these guys. And actually, before we get started, I just want to do a quick recap on overall Jet functionality. Again, Jet is just an Excel add-in, and then reports will exist pretty much as Excel sheets. So when I wanted to open this report, I just open that up. When I want to consume the details on this report, I just go in here and hit run. And this one will take a second. I just toggled between the cubes data source and Dynamics Nav. So this one will take a second to switch over to the other data source. But when it does that, given these filters, and I can hit run and get the latest numbers. And you'll see in the Jet ribbon, again, we've got a number of pieces of functionality. We can go in to design out reports, which we'll show in a second here. I can run reports, so I can, if I'm using the real-time tool, get the latest numbers. If I'm using the analytics tool, that's not really going to be needed. Everything's already pre-calculated. We have a couple different ways to build out reports. Kind of everything that I am gonna show today can all be used with the analytics tool, but we'll show some real-time reporting functionality as well. And then I can manage these reports from the Jet ribbon. So I can upload these into the Jet Hub. I can consume them in the Jet Hub depending on what I want to do. I can schedule reports to be run and emailed out. I can even configure a Word export. So if I'm going through some of those accounts, let's say maybe accounts payable or accounts receivable options, and I need to send out relevant letters to folks, I can actually use some of that information and export it out into Word. And again, I could toggle between different data sources. I can toggle between different companies. So that being said, first of all, to give some context on kind of building out reports with just a real-time tool, I want to show what that process looks like. So we'll start with a blank workbook. This actually is probably even easier than a lot of what folks might have seen in the past, because Jet does have a very good real-time tool, but you'll see there's still going to be some challenges to building out some of these reports. So in this example, maybe I want to build out a customer sales report. I just want to see all of my customer sales, and I want to see that broken down by state and salesperson. So first of all, I'm going to scroll through, and I'm using the browser here. The browser is a nice solution because it allows me to see all the tables and fields in my database. But again, that can be a little bit of a challenge because I need to know where everything sits. I've done a few things to kind of try to streamline the process. I've tried to favorite the tables I'm using on a regular basis. But now if I want to grab all of my fields, I have to go in and find those. So I've got to find number, and let's find name, and then let's go in and find state, sales. Oh, we don't want to grab search name. We want to grab salesperson code and sales amount. And then let's drag this in here. And we'll exit out. And then I hit run here. And I'll get kind of this overall data dump. So I've at least pulled everything inside of Excel from Dynamics Nav, but I still need to put a lot of work into tying this all together. Maybe I need to do a calculation. Maybe I just want to grab 10% of the sales. And let's just say 10%. And we can go in and tie that together. Maybe we want to change the look and feel of our report. So we want to bold this out. We want to change this to currency. I want to bold that bottom portion. We want to do top borders. And then we have all of those details. We can pull up the grid lines. And then we have everything that we need. So we've formatted out this report in the way that we want. Again, this is a nice part about JET is that all that formatting can be done inside of Excel. So if you as the end user, if you're using BC or NAV and you want to build out reports, you could do that in Excel with your Excel knowledge to tie that all together. Now, if I want to filter this down, this will be a fairly manual process. I have to go into JET. We have to go into the NL function, and then I've got to actually tie in my filters. And I want to filter this one by state. And maybe for this example, I want to grab Oregon and Washington. And then maybe I want to put a lower limit on the sales amount. I want to look at everything greater than 30,000. Go in and do that. Then we hit OK. And we grab all of those details. And then the last thing we're going to do is hit fit. And now we're going to hit run. And finally, we've gotten our report. So I've pulled in all these tables and fields. But now, if I want to go a little bit more complex here, I want to be able to also see kind of all of my salespeople. I can go in and make some modifications. So kind of what I'm looking at here is instead of looking at salesperson code, I want to specifically look at salesperson name. And this is an example of adding another field to this. You'll see that that's still going to be a fairly manual process. We're going to have to insert that in here. And then we're going to have to use this NL function to build something custom to make that connection. Let's go. Oh, and we're going to want to go back into design. So I'm going to have to redo that. And we'll just call this sales. And we'll just say salesperson. And then we're going to use this NL function to build this. And well, let's see, we want to decide how we want to pull information out. And we'll turn our favorites off so we have to see all the tables and fields. Again, now if I want to pull in the field for salesperson name, I have to know what table that sits in. So I have to scroll all the way through. I'm actually skipping a big component because I actually know where these are set up. I think it's in salesperson purchaser. Oh, let's see if I can find it. There it is, salesperson purchaser. And then the field I want to return is going to be name. And then I need to tie together a link. So I want to say salesperson code. And let's grab this guy and we'll hit OK. Now we finally have managed to get that name in here. And then we'll do some JET formatting to just get up. Have everything set up so that when I do finally run this, I can run that same complex report and have everything set up. We can go get all those details set up. It looks like we might even have a duplicate of these guys. So again, we'd have to delete that and then modify everything set up depending on what we're looking for. Nope. Depending on how we structure stuff out, we can go through and get that set up. So again, this is how you build out the real-time report. If I want to do the same thing with our analytics solution, I can do it very quickly. And the big difference here is that I'm not reporting going directly against Nav or Business Central. I'm using the Jet Cubes. And because I'm using the Jet Cubes, it'll be notably easier. Everything's already set up and ready to go. So I can go into the pivot table functionality. And for this one, I'm just going to grab sales. We'll open this up. And now we'll just see if I can build out almost an identical report. I want to look at sales amount, and I want to look at sell to customer. And I want to have the salesperson on document, but I can drop that into rows. And if I want to have let's see, sell to customer by state. Again, I can pull all this information in. This is kind of a complex way to look at this. So what we're actually going to do is just change some of these to filters. I'm just going to say add this as a slicer. And we'll remove that out. And let's add salesperson as a slicer as well here. Now let's pull that information out, remove field. Now again, I can see all of my customers. I can filter those out by different states. But now I can go into much more complex elements of this depending on what I want to look at. So if I want to go through and look at when we're actually selling stuff, I can include a posting date. And I can see all those details. And now I can see all my customers and I can filter them out by specific states or salespeople, depending on what I want to look at. And I could tie all this together. You can also go in, and if I want to build this out a little bit more complexly, let's say I also want to see not only what are we selling to some of these customers, but also what is it costing us? And what's our profit and profit percentage? I could see all of those for each of my customers relative to what state that we're looking at. And then depending on what we want to do here, maybe instead of looking at customers directly, I could just look at filters. So instead of seeing all my customers, I can filter those out on a customer by customer basis. And then I can actually break this down a little further and I can look at item category in this. You can see I built this out very quickly. Now I've also got complex drill down. So I can go into subcategories, I can go into specific items. I can double click into some of these. So if I want to see drill down into transactions, I can see all that set up. I can go back out depending on kind of what I want to look at. And the last part here, again, I'm still in Excel, so I can go in and have all of these details. So again, I can have all of this set up depending on how we want to do this. I could also go in and use that browser tool that I showed earlier, where instead of going against all my tables and fields, I can just pull in what I want to look at from there and then tie all of that in very quickly and easily. So those kind of the sales examples. I want to run through a few more examples here in terms of kind of some other reports that Jet Analytics can be used to build out. But before we do that, actually, a lot of the example reports that I'm going to be showing are some of our pre-built reports. I'm just going to be rebuilding those. So I want to pause for a second and give everybody an idea of where all those reports are actually going to sit. If you go to our website, Jet Global or jetreports.com, obviously get set up to the Insight portion of our website. And you can see here, we'll open this up. We have kind of all of our details here, and you can actually see our sample reports. So a lot of the examples that I'll build out today are actually based off some of these reports. And you can actually go in here, you can see we've got over 266 reports. And there's not only reports, there's also going to be some dashboards in Power BI so you can see that context. You can go in, and if there is something that I don't go over, you can actually go in and see a lot of those details. But let's start with a couple of those reports. The first one I'm going to go in and grab is just an accounts payable. And we'll see a couple different breakdowns here. Got payables in currency and an aging breakdown. And I'm going to show how you can actually build out the same report in about a minute. So we'll open this guy. We'll open up yet another new tab here. And this time, again, we're going to go into the Jet Cubes. We'll use that pivot table functionality. And for this one, we're going to grab the accounts payable cube. We'll open that up and you'll see we kind of have all the details that we need. And in this one, we're just going to grab it in local currency. And we'll just grab this. And then maybe we want to take a look at local currency and we want to break it down a couple different ways. So first of all, let's put it into an aging bucket. Then we want to have it set up in columns. And then maybe we want to look at our pay to vendor. Now let's put pay to vendor in rows. That's a little complicated. So let's see if we can include posting group in here. And there we go. We built that pretty much same concept. And some of the sample data might be a little different, but same concept, but in one location. And now if I want to go in and maybe change a few things here, I can go in and do that. I can provide a filter to make sure that we're filtering out anything that's open. We can filter this depending on what we want to look at. We can change this out depending on what we want to see. I can go in, and if I want to have this filtered out by company or currency, I can drop those in as slicers. Let's grab company. Let's go in and add currency. We can stretch these out. There you go. I pretty much have built the example out pretty much in local currency. And then if we want to add that next tab as well, so accounts payable by currency, I can do that exact same thing. I can go in and build that out. And on this one, again, same thing. We're just going right into the pivot table, grabbing our payables example. We're opening that up and going to grab that local currency. And then let's also, I think we want to grab currency. And on this one, we still want to grab our aging bucket, but same thing. Let's drop aging bucket into columns. And then we could also break this same thing out. Let's look at this by pay to vendor. Let's drop it out by each pay to vendor. So we can see who owes me what in what currency. And same thing, we'll drop that open filter in there. And we'll include a slicer for company as well. So you can see I recreated that pre-built report in maybe 4 minutes without a lot of practice. Like I said, I just opened this up when I decided to do it, took a look at what it was, and then rebuilt it. But you could build this exact same report from scratch if you wanted to. So again, example of accounts payable report. We have an accounts payable cube. We've got an accounts receivable cube. Same concepts you can see. When we open up cubes, they're very easy to use. They're just measures which are numerical values and then dimensions that give those meanings. So we can tie all those together depending on what we're looking at. And I think we've got maybe one or two more examples I want to show. I want to show maybe one more inventory example. So we'll look at inventory value. We could see stuff like value history. Oh, so it's actually a little different, but we can kind of rebuild out the same concept here. We can look at kind of current value on hand, the value history, depending on what we want to look at. So same thing, control new, and drag this guy over. And we can come in and we could say current value on hand. Let's just go in here. Let's go inventory. And let's just look at value. And then on this one, maybe we're going to break it down by item category. Kind of look at what we have broken down by item category. And then we can build in a pie chart. So like I said, fairly easy to build out that same concept from what we had set up. If we want to go something a little bit more complex, maybe we want to look at item history broken down by year. We can do that exact same thing. We can go in here, same thing, same pivot table. And then we can just kind of grab what we need to see. So we've got our value or our cost on hand. We've got our item categories, but we want those broken down by different columns. And then I can pull in posting date, drop that into rows depending on what we want to look at. And this is a bit more of like a complex breakdown, but I can go in and open this one up if we want to look at those different months. And this is nice because this gives me some nice drill down. You can see my item category broken down over time for my appropriate inventory categories. You can kind of see that context. And for those of you that are probably still kind of paying attention here, you can kind of see how easy it is to actually build some of these details into an actual dashboard, which is what's been done here. Basically, all of these breakdowns have been tied together, and then they've been broken into dashboards, which is really going to be easy with Jet Analytics because, again, end users don't need to know what they're looking to set up. They just need to, or they don't need to know the structure of the database. They just need to know what they want to pull in. And then this can very easily be pushed into a dashboard so you can go in and consume it. So if I open up like another sales example, I'll kind of show what that looks like. And I've got this guy, and I've got my breakdown here. I've got everything set up so that I can see maybe sales by salesperson, sales by item category, sales by year. And then I've got my central landing page. And on this, I can actually select just what I want to see, depending on kind of what I'm looking for. I could go in and say, hey, I just want to look at my North America company. I can tie that together. If I want to look at just sort of a specific set of sales reps, I can tie those together. And then if I just want to look at bags and totes, I can tie that together. And now I can see all of these kind of intense trends. And these are the sort of trends you're not going to just see with complex, standard, out-of-the-box real-time reports. These are trends that you need to be able to slice and dice your data in order to get a better understanding of it. Because if I wanted to look for who the only person is that's selling bags and totes, it'd take me a number of different runs to get the same functionality that I can click through 3 or 4 times to pull everything in. Also, if you go through and you're using kind of this dashboard functionality where you're slicing and dicing data, you're gonna have a better understanding of kind of what you're working with. They've done a lot of studies around how people learn and retain information. People typically retain, I think it's 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, but they retain closer to 80% of what they see and do. And I think that's really going to be critical, because when I'm interacting with a dashboard, I'm not just seeing it. I'm not looking at a standard report with a graph. I'm actually interacting with it. I'm slicing and dicing it. I'm getting my hands on it, which means I'm going to understand it much better, which means I'm going to understand my business much better. I'm going to remember more about my business. So when I'm making this business decisions, I'm better equipped to have those conversations. And all of the slicing and dicing, again, goes back to that analytics data model. Because everything's tied together in a pre-calculated way, this can easily be sliced and diced, and complex reports can easily be built out and tied together. So you can see those details. And Jet doesn't just stop inside of Excel. If I want to go in and actually want to build out some, if I want to take a look at some examples inside of Power BI, I can see those as well. And while we're waiting for a few of our pre-built examples to go, let's talk about Power BI, because it's a really great tool. It's a phenomenal data visualization tool. It's really designed for the process of visualizing and seeing data. Where the challenge comes with Power BI is going to be the actual data model behind the solution. It'll take a second here. I'm pulling up a couple of pre-built reports, but what I want to pull up here in a second is going to actually be just the blank Power BI starting page, because the first thing it'll ask me for is going to be, where is my data? And we'll see if it wants to let me open up. I might need to restart it because it might be asking me questions about my other reports. There it is. This is the sheet I'm looking for. So the first thing that opens up into Power BI is, where's my data? Now, I've opened up a couple of these reports, so luckily I've already got some pre-built dashboards, but if I don't have anything, the first thing I have to do is I have to go in and say get data. And when I open that up, again, I'm prompted to find where all my data lives. And if I want to look at where that data lives, I have to open that up. And now if I want to look at this, and I'm going to start with just looking at this directly against the database to kind of show everybody how difficult this is. I open this up initially, and I'm back to having to go through all my tables and fields to tie everything together. So I open this up. I have to find the appropriate tables and fields that I need. And I pretty much have to manually go through the ETL process to tie all these together. So you see I have to pull in everything that's related. I have to load it. I'm then going to have to link it, and then I'm going to tie everything together and push it out. The good news is that with Jet Analytics, we don't need to do that. All we need to do is connect Power BI to our cubes, and then we can build out everything from scratch. So we can go into Connect here. Same concept. We'll open this guy up. And then on this one, we're just going to go into Nav. We're going to hit Sales. And now I can start actually building out dashboards. So if I want to say, hey, I want to build out maybe a sales dashboard, I can do that instantly. Go in and tie this together, and I want to look at sales by item category. And I want to look at sales by salesperson. And I want to look at sales by maybe posting date. I can grab those details. Let's look at sales by year. So again, pretty standard stuff in terms of a dashboard. I can kind of see all that. I can click through it depending on what I'm looking for. But where Power BI really excels is going to be if I want to build out more complex data visualization. So if I want to look at where our most profitable customers located in, what city, I can pull that up here. So I should be able to pull that up here. And I've got a couple Power BI dashboards going, so it might be taking a second to pull those details up. There might be an issue with the map connection here. That's interesting. Let's check by country. Yeah, it looks like it might be an issue with just the actual data visualization, but typically you can go in and see that broken out by different maps. Like I said, we can change this to a couple different things. If we wanted to actually do a tree map, we can kind of see where all those different customers are by different state. So you can see, okay, which our most profitable cities are using this tree map, and we can isolate any of these depending on kind of what we want to look at. And we can get in some of these KPIs depending on how stuff's set up. So we can go in and say profit, and then we can go in and tie that together. And we can filter this out, and we can filter this out by just about anything. If we want to look at salespeople, we could do that and isolate those details. So again, some good context. You can also see some of those reports can obviously be also built out in Power BI if we want to look at some financial reports. Financial reports as a whole in Power BI aren't necessarily the kind of clearest option, because you're kind of having to build out, and typically most folks are expecting financial reports in more of a grid view. But these are great ways to kind of visualize some of the components of what you're looking at. If there's specific GL accounts that you want to take a look at, this is some good context. You can get a couple of KPIs. So what's your gross margin versus your budget? How are your cost of goods sold versus budget going to compare? How's revenue versus budget, etc. So you can kind of get these good PowerPoint dashboard breakdowns. Again, you can see overall details, but again, if you walk into a bank, typically they're kind of expecting you to have everything straight up in that Excel format, which is why you can go in and use Jet for that. But anyway, I'm going to cut this, like I said, a little short. We ran through a lot of content today, so I'm going to probably give folks back 30 minutes. But I do want to stop and check and see if there are any questions about Jet. So what I'm going to do, I'll put it on the on just our close slide here, and I'll wait. If you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat bar. I'll happily go through and answer those. You can also go in, and if you want to talk to the team at Optimus, like I mentioned, they've all got a number of folks that are quickly becoming great Jet experts, so they can answer a lot of those questions on their end. It's also worth noting that they've got a number of promotions set up for the end of the year. Optimus, again, always an advocate for customers. So they've twisted my arm a little bit. They've got some exclusive discounts on some of the Jet solutions. So if you're interested in learning more about any of those, again, reach out to Vishal or the team at Optimus. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer those. So I'll pause for a second, see if there's any questions. What we might do is